Welcome to BharatLens, India's sharpest eye on world affairs. Canada's own intelligence agency has officially declared Khalistani extremists a national security threat, in a report tabled in Parliament. For years, India screamed this from every rooftop. For years, Ottawa looked the other way. So what changed? And what does this mean for India right now? This is not a small development. This is not a footnote in a bureaucratic report. What Canada's intelligence establishment published this week is a document that India has been waiting for over a decade. And the timing? Right after a major diplomatic reset between New Delhi and Ottawa. Right as Canada scrambles to find new trade partners in a world turned upside down by American aggression. This story has layers. Let's peel every single one of them. To understand why this moment matters, you have to understand how bad it got. In June 2023, a Khalistani separatist was shot dead outside a Sikh temple in Surrey, British Columbia. Canada's then Prime Minister immediately pointed a finger at India, making a stunning public accusation that Indian government agents were behind the killing. India flatly denied it. What followed was a diplomatic catastrophe. Diplomats were expelled on both sides. High commissioners were recalled. Visas were suspended. Students got stranded. Businesses took hits. Two democracies, connected by millions of people, billions in trade, and a shared history, reduced to screaming at each other across the Pacific. And through all of it, the Khalistani networks in Canada continued to operate. Fundraising. Propagandizing. Threatening Indian officials and journalists. Running referendum events in Canadian cities with full political support from members of parliament. India kept raising it. Ottawa kept deflecting. The argument from Trudeau's government was always the same: free speech, due process, sovereignty. What they didn't say out loud was simpler: they needed Sikh community votes in key constituencies to survive politically. And so a small group of violent extremists got a very long leash. That leash has now been yanked hard. Canada's intelligence agency published its annual public report this week, based on assessments from 2025. The document was tabled in the Canadian Parliament. And buried inside it is a statement that India has waited years to hear. It says that ongoing involvement in violent extremist activities by Canada-based Khalistani extremists continues to pose a national security threat to Canada and to Canadian interests. Read that again. A national security threat to Canada. Not just to India. Not just India's problem. Canada's problem. Their institutions being exploited. Their citizens being deceived. Funds being collected from unsuspecting community members and redirected towards violent activity in India. The report also invokes the 40th anniversary of the Air India Flight 182 bombing, the deadliest terrorist attack in Canadian history, which killed 329 people, the vast majority of them Canadian citizens of South Asian origin. That bombing has been directly linked to Khalistani extremists operating out of Canada in the 1980s. The intelligence agency is essentially reminding Canadians, this is what happens when you ignore this threat. This is what it costs. This is also the second consecutive year that Canadian intelligence has issued this kind of warning. In June 2025, a previous report said that Khalistani extremists were using Canadian soil as a base for propaganda, fundraising, and planning violence, primarily targeting India. But this year's report is more explicit. More public. More politically significant. Because it was tabled in Parliament. Because it cannot be buried quietly in a classified briefing. Because now it is on the record. Now here's where it gets geopolitically interesting. Justin Trudeau is gone. Mark Carney is the Prime Minister of Canada. And Carney is a different animal entirely. He is an economist. A pragmatist. A man who understands that Canada cannot afford to be diplomatically isolated, especially not while Donald Trump is ripping up the global trade order and making Canada's economic future deeply uncertain. In March 2026, Carney flew to India. The first standalone bilateral visit by a Canadian Prime Minister in 8 years. He stood alongside Prime Minister Modi at Hyderabad House in New Delhi. They announced a target of expanding bilateral trade to the equivalent of over $50 billion by 2030. They signed terms of reference for a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. They announced a major uranium supply deal, Canada supplying nuclear fuel to India's growing energy sector. Modi said that in less than 1 year of Carney being in office, their relationship had leapt forward by a light year. Now think about what just happened. Canada needs trade partners because Trump is unreliable. India wants to diversify beyond American dependency. Canada has uranium, pulses, fertilizers, critical minerals. India has a booming market, skilled manpower, and growing strategic weight. The economic logic of this partnership is overwhelming, and both sides finally have leaders willing to act on it. But here's the complication that did not disappear quietly. During Carney's visit, police in Surrey knocked on a Sikh activist's door, an associate of the man killed in 2023, to warn him that both he and his family were at risk. That is the reality on the ground in Canada. The threat is live. The investigations are ongoing. The Niger case is still in court, with 4 Indian nationals facing murder charges. And a separate American federal case has already produced a guilty plea from an Indian national accused of plotting to kill a Sikh activist on American soil. Carney, to his credit, did not use his visit to India to relitigate these accusations publicly. He chose a process-driven approach, let the courts handle it, engage with India on trade and security separately, and rebuild the relationship from a position of shared interest rather than mutual accusation. That diplomatic maturity is what has made this reset possible. So what does India actually gain from all of this? First, validation. For 15 years, India has been telling the world that Canada was allowing its soil to be used as a launchpad for violence targeting India. Canadian intelligence has now confirmed this in writing, in a public document, placed before Parliament. Every diplomat, every journalist, every commentator who said India was being paranoid now has to reckon with the fact that Canadian intelligence agrees with India's assessment. Second, leverage. The CSIS report gives India something concrete to work with in future diplomatic conversations. It is no longer India's word against Canada's political calculations. It is Canada's own spy agency saying this is a real threat. When India asks Canada to act against specific individuals or organizations, that request now comes with Ottawa's own intelligence framework backing it up. Third, trade and energy. The uranium deal alone is significant. India is building nuclear power capacity aggressively. Canadian uranium is among the best in the world. And the comprehensive trade agreement, if it is finalized by year-end as Carney has committed, would open up enormous opportunities, from agriculture to technology to education. Fourth, the student and diaspora channel. Nearly 500,000 Indian students are currently studying in Canada. The relationship between the two countries has massive people-to-people depth. Normalizing the bilateral relationship protects that channel and keeps it productive. And fifth, strategic realignment in the post-America world. Canada, spooked by Trump's unpredictability, is actively seeking to reduce dependence on the United States. India, confident in its own growth story, is positioning itself as an alternative anchor for Western democracies looking for new partners. The Canada-India reset is part of a larger pattern, where India is becoming indispensable not because it is begging for attention, but because the world needs what India offers. Here is the honest picture of what remains unresolved. The Niger case is not going away. 4 men are in Canadian courts. American prosecutors have new evidence they plan to introduce. A Globe and Mail investigation has published detailed claims about the alleged role of Indian consular officials in arranging the killing. India continues to deny all of it. The legal process will take years. And every time there is a development in that courtroom, it will create friction in the bilateral relationship. The Khalistani networks have not been dismantled. They have been labeled. There is a significant distance between a government intelligence report calling something a threat and that government actually taking action against specific individuals, freezing funds, deregistering organizations, or extraditing suspects. India will be watching very carefully to see whether the words in this report translate into enforcement action, or whether this is a diplomatic gesture dressed up as intelligence assessment. And Mark Carney has a political challenge. The Sikh community in Canada is large, organized, and electorally significant. The vast majority of Sikh Canadians are not extremists. But among the community's political leadership, there are voices who are furious at this CSIS report, who see it as targeting an entire community, who believe Canada is capitulating to Indian pressure. Carney has to walk a very fine line, acknowledging the security threat while reassuring ordinary Sikh Canadians that they are not the target. What India needs from this moment is not triumphalism. It is quiet, sustained pressure to convert this intelligence validation into concrete enforcement outcomes. Names on lists. Funds frozen. Extradition requests processed. That is how you know a reset is real, not by what gets signed on a stage in Hyderabad House, but by what happens in the courtrooms and intelligence agencies and law enforcement channels that operate away from the cameras. Canada has blinked. After years of political calculations that allowed extremist networks to operate freely, Canada's own intelligence establishment has told its parliament what India has been saying all along: this is a threat, it is real, and it targets India. The question now is not whether Canada finally admits the problem. They have. The question is, will they do anything about it? And here is what I want you to think about. If the Niger case had never happened, if Trudeau had never made that public accusation, would Canada have ever reached this point? Or did it take the most explosive diplomatic crisis in decades to force Ottawa to look honestly at what was growing on its own soil? Tell me what you think in the comments. And if this analysis cuts through the noise for you, subscribe to BharatLens. This is the lens through which India sees the world.